The sun shone brightly over the old church ruins as Lucas adjusted his camera lens. He wasn't a photographer, but today was different. He needed the perfect shot to plan his restoration designs. "Excuse me," came a voice behind him. Lucas turned to see a young woman with a camera slung over her shoulder. Her curly hair framed her face, and her smile was warm. "Oh, sorry, am I in your way?" Lucas asked, stepping aside. She laughed. "Not at all, but you're missing the best angle. Try over there." Lucas followed her advice and was amazed. "You're right, thanks. Are you a photographer?" "Emma," she said, holding out her hand. "I take pictures of places like this, places with stories." "Lucas," he replied, shaking her hand. "I'm an architect. I help rebuild places like this." They started talking, and it was as if time disappeared. Emma showed Lucas photos of the ruins from different angles, capturing the soul of the place. Lucas explained how he imagined the church restored to its former glory. By the end of the day, Lucas felt a connection he couldn't ignore. As Emma packed her camera, he asked, "Would you like to grab a coffee? I'd love to hear more about your work." Emma smiled. "I'd like that." Lucas and Emma found a small cafe on the corner of a quiet street. It had a cozy vibe, with bookshelves lining the walls and soft jazz playing in the background. Emma ordered a hot chocolate, while Lucas went for his usual black coffee. "So, what got you into photography?" Lucas asked, stirring his drink. Emma smiled, her eyes lighting up. "It started with my grandfather's old camera. He used to take pictures of everything, family gatherings, nature, even just the cracks in the pavement. He told me every photo holds a memory, even the ones you don't expect." Lucas nodded. "That's beautiful. It's kind of like architecture. Every building tells a story, even the ruins." They talked for hours, sharing stories of their passions. Emma told Lucas about a time she climbed a mountain just to capture the sunrise, and Lucas shared how he once stayed up all night sketching designs for a library that reminded him of his childhood home. By the time they left the cafe, the sun had set, and the streetlights cast a warm glow on the cobblestone road. Lucas walked Emma to her car, feeling a strange sense of ease he hadn't felt in years. "Thanks for the coffee," Emma said, her cheeks slightly pink from the cold, or maybe from something else. "Thanks for the company," Lucas replied. "Maybe we could do this again?" Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." As Lucas watched her drive away, he couldn't help but smile. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: he wanted to see Emma again. The next few weeks flew by as Lucas and Emma spent more time together. Lucas invited Emma to see his sketches for the church restoration project. She brought her camera and started taking photos of his work. "This could be a series," Emma said, snapping a shot of Lucas hunched over his drawing table. "The process of creation, from the first sketch to the finished project." Lucas laughed. "And here I thought I was just some boring architect." Emma shook her head. "Not boring, passionate." Their collaboration became natural. Emma's photos inspired Lucas to incorporate new ideas into his designs. Lucas's sketches, in turn, gave Emma fresh perspectives for her photography. One day, Emma suggested they visit an abandoned train station she had photographed before. Lucas brought his sketchbook, and they spent hours exploring the dusty, echoing space. "It's like this place is alive," Lucas said, running his fingers along the crumbling wall. Emma raised her camera. "Then let's bring it back to life." That night, Lucas stayed up late, sketching a design for a modernized version of the station. He couldn't wait to show Emma. But as he worked, a thought crept into his mind. He was falling for her. And for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid. Lucas and Emma's relationship deepened as they continued working together. They weren't just creating art, they were building something personal. Whether it was sharing a meal after a long day of work or walking through the city at night, every moment felt meaningful. One rainy evening, Lucas and Emma found themselves stuck in her apartment, unable to go out. Lucas spotted a guitar in the corner. "You play?" he asked. Emma laughed. "Barely. My fingers are too clumsy for music." "Let me see," Lucas said, picking up the guitar. He strummed a few chords, then started humming a tune. Emma watched, her head tilted. "That's beautiful. Did you write it?" Lucas nodded. "It's something I play when I need to think." "Play it again," Emma said, sitting next to him. This time, she hummed along, and for a moment, they were lost in the music. When the rain stopped, Lucas walked to the window. "I should go." Lucas turned to her, his heart pounding. He leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, tender kiss. It was as if the world outside had vanished, leaving just the two of them. Neither of them said anything after. They didn't need to. Their silence spoke of a love that words couldn't capture. A year passed, and Lucas and Emma were inseparable. On their first anniversary, Lucas planned a surprise dinner at a small countryside inn. He couldn't wait to see Emma's face when she saw the lights he'd strung up in the garden. Emma was driving them there, humming along to the radio. Lucas glanced at her and smiled, feeling grateful for every moment they had shared. "Lucas, look!" Emma exclaimed, pointing at a deer on the side of the road. It happened in an instant. The deer darted onto the road, and Emma swerved to avoid it. The car skidded on the wet pavement, crashing into a tree. When Lucas woke up, his head was pounding. He turned to Emma and froze. She was unconscious, her face pale and still. "Emma!" he shouted, trying to shake her awake, but the world blurred around him as pain overtook his senses. Lucas opened his eyes to the sound of beeping monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic. His body ached and his head throbbed, but the first thing he thought of was Emma. "Emma!" he croaked, trying to sit up. A nurse hurried to his side. "You need to rest, sir. You've been through a lot." "Where's Emma? Is she okay?" Lucas demanded, ignoring the pain. The nurse hesitated, her face clouded with concern. "She's alive, but she's in the ICU. You both sustained injuries in the crash, but she took the worst of it." Lucas's heart sank. "Can I see her?" "Not yet," the nurse said gently. "The doctors are running tests. You need to rest or you'll make your injuries worse." But how could Lucas rest when Emma was fighting for her life? The hours dragged by, each one heavier than the last. Finally, a doctor came in, his expression grave. "Mr. Lucas, Emma has suffered a head injury," he explained. "She's stable, but she doesn't remember the last 2 years. It's as if those memories have been wiped away." Lucas felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. "She doesn't remember us?" The doctor shook his head. "I'm sorry. Memory loss can be unpredictable. She may recover or she may not. For now, you need to be patient with her." Lucas nodded, but inside, he was falling apart. How could he be patient when the woman he loved no longer knew him? When Lucas was finally allowed to see Emma, his hands trembled as he pushed open the door to her room. She was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. When she turned to face him, her eyes were blank. "Hi," he said softly, forcing a smile. "It's me, Lucas." Emma frowned, tilting her head. "Do I know you?" The words cut deeper than Lucas could have imagined. "Yes, we've been together for 2 years. He stopped himself, unsure if saying they were in love would overwhelm her. "We're friends." Emma studied him, her expression wary. "I don't remember you." Lucas tried to keep his voice steady. "That's okay. I'll help you remember." But Emma didn't look reassured. If anything, she seemed uncomfortable. "I'm sorry. I don't feel like I know you at all." Lucas nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "That's okay," he said again, even though it wasn't. "I'll give you time." But as he left the room, tears filled his eyes. To Emma, he was a stranger, and the thought of her looking at him like that, like he was nobody, was almost too much to bear. Over the next few days, Lucas visited Emma regularly, but their conversations were awkward and strained. She treated him politely but distantly, like a nurse or a visitor who had no place in her heart. Lucas tried showing her photos of their time together, but Emma only shook her head. "I'm sorry," she said. "None of this feels familiar." At night, Lucas sat alone in his apartment, staring at the scrapbook of memories he had begun compiling. Each page was a reminder of the life they had built together, a life Emma no longer remembered. He felt trapped in a nightmare. Every time he tried to talk to Emma, it was like reaching out to a ghost. She was there, but the connection they had was gone. His friends told him to give her space, but how could he? Every moment away from her felt like another piece of their love slipping through his fingers. One night, Lucas broke down, smashing a framed photo of them in frustration. The glass shattered, and he sank to the floor, sobbing. He didn't know how to keep fighting for someone who didn't even know who he was. Despite his despair, Lucas refused to give up. He couldn't. Deep down, he believed their love was still there, buried beneath the layers of Emma's memory loss. He decided to approach things differently. Instead of overwhelming Emma with their past, he would focus on the present. He would rebuild their connection from scratch, one step at a time. He started small, bringing her favorite flowers, daisies, though she didn't remember why she loved them. He didn't tell her about their shared moments. He simply sat by her side and listened as she talked about her confusion and fears. Gradually, Emma began to relax around him. She even smiled a few times, though it was a faint shadow of the laughter they used to share. One day, as Lucas helped her take a walk around the hospital garden, she said something that filled him with cautious hope. "You seem familiar," she murmured, glancing at him. "Like I've seen you in a dream." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. "Maybe that's a good sign," he said, trying to sound casual, but inside, he felt like a spark had been reignited. It wasn't much, but it was something, and for Lucas, that was enough to keep going. Lucas returned to his apartment with renewed determination. He knew that he couldn't force Emma to remember their past, but he could remind her of the love they had shared. He spread out every photo, ticket stub, and memento he could find on the floor. Slowly, he began arranging them into a scrapbook, each page telling a chapter of their story. There were pictures of their first date at the cafe, a pressed flower from their trip to the countryside, and a concert ticket from the night they danced under the stars. Each piece held a memory, a moment that had shaped their love. Lucas stayed up late into the night, pouring his heart into the scrapbook. He wasn't sure if it would work, but it was his way of saying, "This is us. This is what we had." When he finished, he sat back and looked at the finished book. It wasn't just a collection of memories, it was a testament to their love. And now, all he could do was hope that it would reach Emma in a way words never could. Lucas carefully flipped through the scrapbook one last time before heading to the hospital. Each page told a story, a memory of love, laughter, and adventure. The weight of the book in his hands felt like he was carrying their entire relationship. At Emma's room, he hesitated outside the door. What if this doesn't work, he thought. But then he reminded himself that it wasn't about forcing Emma to remember. It was about showing her how much they had shared. "Hi, Emma," Lucas said as he stepped inside. He held up the scrapbook. "I brought you something." Emma looked up from her bed, her expression guarded. "What is it?" "It's us," Lucas said simply, setting the scrapbook on the tray table in front of her. Emma hesitated before opening the cover. Her fingers traced the edge of the first photo, a picture of them standing in front of the church ruins where they had first met. "This is where we met?" she asked, her voice uncertain. Lucas nodded. "You told me about the best angles for capturing the light. That's how we started talking." Emma turned the page, her brow furrowed as she studied the next photo. It was from their first date, at the cozy cafe with bookshelves on the walls. She read the small caption Lucas had written beneath it, "The beginning of everything." "I don't remember this," Emma said softly, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe even recognition. "That's okay," Lucas said gently. "You don't have to. Just look through it. Take your time." Emma nodded, her fingers lingering on the photos as she slowly turned the pages. Lucas sat silently, watching her. He could see the emotions playing across her face, confusion, sadness, and, at times, a faint smile. For the first time since the accident, Lucas felt hope stirring in his chest. Over the next few days, Emma spent hours flipping through the scrapbook. She didn't say much, but Lucas could tell it was affecting her. Sometimes she would ask questions, simple ones, like where a photo was taken or what had happened that day. But more often than not, she would simply stare at the pages, her brow furrowed as if she were trying to force the memories to surface. "It's frustrating," she admitted one afternoon. "It's like, part of me wants to remember, but it's just out of reach." Lucas reached for her hand, then stopped, unsure if she would welcome the gesture. "It's okay, Emma. You don't have to push yourself. Just take it one step at a time." Emma sighed. "Do you ever get scared, Lucas? That I'll never remember?" Lucas hesitated. The truth was, he was terrified, but he couldn't let Emma see that. "No," he lied. "I believe in us." Emma gave him a small, sad smile. "You seem so sure. I wish I could feel the same." Lucas didn't know how to respond. He wanted to tell her everything, to remind her of all the moments that had made their love so special, but he knew that wasn't what she needed right now. Instead, he simply said, "I'll be here, no matter what." And for now, that was enough. One evening, as Emma flipped through the scrapbook, she paused on a photo of them sitting on a picnic blanket in a meadow. She stared at it for a long time, her expression unreadable. "What's this?" she asked, holding up the page. Lucas leaned over to look. "That was our first picnic. You brought homemade sandwiches, and we stayed until the stars came out." Emma frowned, her fingers tracing the edge of the photo. I think I remember something." Lucas's heart leapt. "Really? What do you remember?" Emma closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I don't know, it's just a feeling, like I was happy." Lucas smiled, his chest tight with emotion. "You were. We both were." Emma opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. For a moment, Lucas thought he saw a glimmer of recognition there. But then she looked away, her expression clouded with doubt. "I don't know if it's real. Maybe I'm just imagining it because you told me." "It's real," Lucas said firmly. "You don't have to doubt it." Emma didn't respond, but she didn't close the scrapbook either. And for Lucas, that small step forward was enough to keep him going. Lucas realized that if Emma was going to reconnect with her past, she needed more than just photos. She needed the people who had been part of their story. He reached out to their closest friends and family, asking them to visit Emma and share their memories of her. One by one, they came. Emma's best friend, Sarah, who brought a stack of letters they had exchanged, Lucas's sister, Leah, who told funny stories about their double dates, and even Emma's parents, who shared childhood photos and family traditions. At first, Emma was overwhelmed by the attention. "I feel like everyone knows me except me," she said one day, her voice tinged with frustration. Lucas knelt beside her. "They're here because they care about you. We all do." Emma sighed, but didn't protest when Sarah handed her one of the letters. As she read, a faint smile crossed her lips. "Do you remember that?" Sarah asked hopefully. Emma shook her head. "No, but it feels like something I would have written." Lucas watched from the corner of the room, his heart aching with both hope and sorrow. Emma might not remember everything yet, but he could see that the pieces were starting to come together. Lucas had an idea. If Emma couldn't remember the past, maybe he could recreate it. He decided to bring her back to a special moment they had shared, a date that had been unforgettable to him, even if it was now lost to her. "Emma," he said one afternoon, "would you like to get some fresh air? I thought we could go to the park." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "I think that might be nice." Lucas took her to the same park where they'd had a picnic during their first summer together. He spread out a blanket under a large oak tree and unpacked a basket of sandwiches, fruit, and Emma's favorite chocolate cookies. "This feels familiar," Emma said, looking around. Lucas smiled. "We used to come here all the time." Emma sat on the blanket, nibbling on a sandwich as she watched the ducks in the nearby pond. She seemed more relaxed than she had been in weeks. Lucas handed her a small bouquet of daisies. "You always said these were your favorite." Emma took the flowers, her eyes softening. "They are, but I don't know why." "Maybe your heart remembers even if your mind doesn't," Lucas said gently. As the sun began to set, Lucas took out his sketchbook and started drawing the scene: the oak tree, the blanket, and Emma sitting quietly with the daisies in her lap. Emma leaned over to watch. "You're good at this." Lucas glanced at her. "You told me that the first time we came here. You said I should draw more because it made me happy." Emma didn't respond, but Lucas saw her lips curve into a faint smile. For the first time since the accident, he felt like they were truly connecting. That night, Emma had a dream. She was in the park, sitting under the oak tree, but everything was hazy and golden, like an old photograph. In the dream, Lucas was beside her, holding her hand. She woke up with her heart pounding, unsure if the dream was a memory or just her imagination. "Lucas," she said the next day, I had a dream about the park. You were there. Lucas looked up from his coffee, his eyes hopeful. What happened in the dream? I don't know, Emma admitted. It was just a feeling, like I was safe, like I was loved. Lucas smiled softly. You were? Emma stared at him, searching his face. Do you think the dream means I'm starting to remember? I think it means your heart is starting to wake up, Lucas said. Emma didn't reply, but she couldn't shake the dream. It stayed with her all day, like a whisper from her subconscious, urging her to keep searching for the truth. The next time Emma looked through the scrapbook, something shifted. She stopped on a photo of her and Lucas standing in front of a mural they had painted together during a community art project. As she stared at the photo, a memory surfaced, a flash of laughter, the feel of a paintbrush in her hand, and Lucas's voice saying, "You're getting paint everywhere!" I remember this, Emma said suddenly, her voice trembling. Lucas's head shot up. You do? Emma nodded, her eyes wide. We painted that mural together. I spilled paint all over the sidewalk, and you couldn't stop laughing. Lucas felt tears sting his eyes. That's right. You said the mess made it more beautiful. Emma looked at him, her expression a mixture of wonder and disbelief. How can I remember that and nothing else? It's a start, Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. It's the first step. But as quickly as Emma's memory returned, doubt crept in. What if I'm just imagining things? She asked Lucas one evening. What if it's not real? Lucas reached for her hand, but stopped himself, unsure if the gesture would be welcome. It's real, Emma. I know it is. Emma shook her head. How can you be so sure? I feel like I'm grasping at straws, trying to put together a puzzle with missing pieces. Lucas wanted to reassure her, but he knew her fear was valid. He had to find a way to help her trust herself. That night, as Emma lay awake, she thought about the mural, the park, and the scrapbook. She didn't know if her memories would ever fully return, but she realized she wanted to keep trying. Not for Lucas, but for herself. Emma decided to take a step forward. Lucas, she said one morning, can we go to the mural? I want to see it. Lucas's face lit up. Of course, let's go. When they arrived at the wall where the mural was painted, Emma stood in front of it, her fingers brushing the vibrant colors. More memories surfaced, flashes of sunlight, Lucas's laughter, the warmth of his hand guiding hers. I remember this, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. It's real. Lucas moved closer, his voice soft. It is, and so are we. Emma turned to him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I want to believe that. I really do. Lucas nodded. We'll take it one day at a time. I'll be here no matter what. For the first time since the accident, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Lucas and Emma began spending more time together, not as a couple, but as friends rebuilding a bond. They visited places they used to love, cafes, parks, and galleries, without the pressure of trying to force memories to return. One afternoon, while walking through the city, Emma laughed at something Lucas said. It was a small, spontaneous moment, but it felt monumental. Lucas smiled. It's good to see you laugh again. Emma looked at him, her expression soft. It's good to feel like myself again. Lucas's heart swelled with hope. They weren't back to where they had been, but they were on their way. Emma woke up one morning with a strange sense of clarity. It wasn't a specific memory, but a feeling, a quiet voice inside her telling her that Lucas was more than just someone from her past. He was someone important, someone she wanted to know again. She decided to invite him out. Lucas, she said when he arrived at the hospital, can we go somewhere different today? Somewhere special? Lucas's eyes lit up. Of course. Where do you want to go? Emma hesitated, then smiled. Surprise me. Lucas took her to a small art gallery that they had once visited on a whim. As they walked through the quiet halls, Emma found herself drawn to a painting of a stormy sea. She stared at it for a long time, her thoughts swirling like the waves in the artwork. I've seen this before, she said finally. Haven't I? Lucas nodded. We came here once, after a really rough day. You said the painting reminded you of how life feels sometimes, wild and out of control. Emma glanced at him. What did you say? Lucas smiled. I said that even storms end, and the sea always calms down. Emma turned back to the painting, her heart pounding. For the first time, she felt like she was starting to understand why Lucas mattered so much to her. Over the next few weeks, more pieces of Emma's memory began to return. They were small, like the way Lucas took his coffee or the sound of his laugh, but they felt monumental to her. "I remember how you hum when you're thinking," she told him one day, catching him mid-tune. Lucas froze, then grinned. "You used to tease me about that." Emma smiled back. "It's a good memory." Each time a memory surfaced, Emma felt a little closer to herself and to Lucas. But not all the memories were happy ones. One evening, as they were looking through the scrapbook together, Emma stopped on a page with a photo of them standing in front of a half-built house. The caption read, "Our future home." Emma stared at the photo, her expression darkening. "We were going to live together?" Lucas nodded, his voice cautious. "We talked about it. We even started planning." Emma closed the scrapbook abruptly. "That feels overwhelming." Lucas frowned. "Emma, it's okay. We don't have to rush into anything." "But you expect me to," she snapped. "You want me to remember everything, to go back to the way things were." "That's not true," Lucas said, his voice rising. "I just want you to know how much you mean to me." Emma shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I feel like I'm being pushed into a life I don't recognize. It's too much, Lucas." Lucas felt his heart breaking, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't mean to make you feel that way." Emma turned away, her voice trembling. "I need some space." Lucas left that night, feeling more lost than ever. He had been so focused on helping Emma remember their past that he hadn't realized how much pressure she was under. The next day, Lucas returned to the hospital with a bouquet of daisies. Emma was sitting by the window, her expression thoughtful. "I'm sorry," Lucas said, setting the flowers on the table. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I miss us." Emma looked at him, her eyes soft. "I miss you too, Lucas, but I need time to figure out who I am now." Lucas nodded. "I understand, and I'll wait as long as you need." Emma reached for his hand, her touch hesitant but warm. "Thank you for everything." In that moment, they both realized that healing wasn't about rushing back to the way things were. It was about finding a new way forward, together. One day, Emma surprised Lucas with an idea. "You've been helping me rediscover myself," she said. "Maybe it's time for me to help you." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Emma held up her camera. "Let's do something creative together. Your designs, my photography." Lucas grinned. "That sounds perfect." They decided to document the restoration of an old community center Lucas had been working on. Emma photographed the process, capturing the transformation of the space, while Lucas sketched ideas inspired by her photos. As they worked, they fell into an easy rhythm, their creative synergy reigniting the bond they had once shared. Their project gained attention in the community, and Emma began to feel a sense of purpose again. She wasn't just rediscovering her relationship with Lucas, she was rediscovering herself. One evening, as they were reviewing the photos together, Emma turned to Lucas and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Lucas smiled. "I never will." Emma leaned closer, her voice soft. "I think I'm starting to believe that." That night, Emma had another dream. This time, it was vivid and full of emotion. She and Lucas were dancing under a canopy of stars, laughing and twirling like children. When she woke up, the memory lingered. It wasn't just a dream, it felt real, like a fragment of something she had lost. "Lucas," she said the next morning, "I had a dream about us. We were dancing." Lucas's eyes widened. "That happened at the park, during a festival." Emma's heart raced. "I think I'm starting to remember." While cleaning out a drawer in her apartment, Emma found a letter addressed to Lucas in her handwriting. She opened it, her hands trembling. The letter was filled with words of love and hope, written before the accident. "You make me feel like anything is possible," it said. "No matter what happens, I want you to know how much you mean to me." Emma showed the letter to Lucas that evening. "I wrote this for you. I don't remember doing it, but I think I meant every word." Lucas's voice was thick with emotion. "You did, and you still do." Emma's memories returned in pieces, like a puzzle slowly coming together. Each fragment brought her closer to Lucas and closer to the woman she had been before the accident. One evening, as they sat on the couch reviewing the scrapbook, Emma turned to Lucas and said, "I remember. All of it." Lucas's breath caught. "You do?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I remember how much I love you." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as they both cried. "I've waited so long to hear you say that." Emma and Lucas stood in front of the mural they had painted together, hand in hand. This time, they weren't looking back, they were looking forward. "We've been through so much," Emma said, her voice steady, "but I'm ready for whatever comes next." Lucas smiled. "As long as we're together." Emma squeezed his hand. "Always." And as they walked away, the sun setting behind them, they knew that their love had not only survived, but grown stronger. Together, they were ready to start a new chapter, one full of hope, creativity, and a love that could withstand anything.